Trigger warning. Some of the topics I'm going to be discussing might be off-putting because, I'm a grumpy and sometimes I say things that people take incorrectly, and with consent and stuff like that. So if the topic of role-playing games falling apart and why they might fall apart is something that might trigger you, probably should stop watching now. Hello and welcome. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM, with another OGGM adventure. And today we're starting a new topic of conversation. Why do games fall apart? We've talked a lot about things you can do to make games work, DM tips, player tips, starting game tips, things like that. But sometimes things end. And usually it's my fucking fault. No, sometimes things end. And in our hobby, especially now. And sometimes it's okay to just sit and talk about it. And I'm hoping that my personal experiences can help maybe somebody else who's going through what I'm going through and what the gaming community is going through. So if that means anything to you, and if you want to take an example of what my personal views are, even though they might be a little skewed and sometimes angry, then great, that's what this is about. Because sometimes it has to be talked about. So, and these aren't going to be long, they're going to be short. I'm going to do it in multiple parts. So part one, communication. I think that is the most important reason why games fall apart. And with communication, we will caveat to this. Does the Zoom, Skynet, Roll20 environment actually add to the reasons why the games are falling apart? I know I'm gaming less now since this started as opposed to more, and you would think people would be gaming more because this makes it a lot easier to game. You could game with anybody in the world with Roll20 and Zoom and Discord, and you can game with people you haven't gamed with in a while. But the psychology is a lot different than the ease. And the psychology of this, especially in groups, is what's known as the mirror effect, or the mirror phenomenon. And that is that on some deep-seated psychological level, mirrors, glass objects, reflections, seeing people through a screen is actually dehumanizing. On some level, we're sort of afraid of mirrors. We're sort of afraid of reflections. We're sort of afraid of the fact that this flat surface doesn't really give you the full human gamut of whatever, that connection that being in the same place with people does. It distances us. Even though it makes communicating easier, it actually makes communicating harder because when we're looking at this screen, this camera, this whatever, there's actually a part of our brain that is detaching. Now, this is just not my opinion. This is known fact. This is, the mirror phenomenon, the screen phenomenon, the suspension of disbelief phenomenon are all documented things that people experience when looking at glass screens, when looking at windows, when looking at mirrors, when looking at TVs, when looking at the computer. Especially with the computer, there's something very dehumanizing about communicating through this method, even though this method makes communicating a lot easier. We feel distance, we feel distracted. It's a lot easier for me at home to do this. And then come back, even though there's a communication going on. And that is rude. But it's easier because when I'm at home, I'm safe and I'm around with my stuff. And we don't think about other people. So part of the problem, at least in this current environment, why people are saying, oh, my game kind of fell apart, is this. Now, caveat back to the main topic, communication. Now, we've talked about session zero hundreds of times. And it can't be emphasized enough how important session zero is, how important it is to make sure everybody understands and agrees upon the rules of the game. But I think adding to the session zero, there needs to be like a session 10 and a session 20 or a session 0 2.0, which means 5, 10, 15, 20 games, 2 games in, every, month or 2 months that the game's going on, you stop and you take a break and you just, for 10, 20, 30 minutes, whether it be one-on-one or as a group, again, reflect and reapproach that session zero topic, the rules of the world, the expectations of the players, the expectations of the game masters, the personality issues that are coming up, the interpretation issues, the perception issues, all the issues, the who, the what, the where, what do you want, what do you fear, what are you looking for from the game, all these little basic ideas that we have sort of ground together into this session zero concept needs to occasionally be repeated. At the very beginning of the game, yes, you need to establish right up, this is the rules, this is the reality. But that reality could change through play. I mean, you're playing the game and then a new supplement comes out and somebody says, oh, in this supplement there's this thing, I want to bring it into the game. Is that okay? And if the DM says, yes, that's okay. Or if the DM says, I know I said that this wasn't going to be allowed, but now that I've looked at it, I think this should be allowed. Well, then the rules and the reality of the game have changed. And if the DM is not just completely closed to player interpretation and player ideas, oh, well, we've already established the rules, so I'm not going to let you play that. Maybe every now and then you need to readdress that and go, I think this is a good idea and it would really fit the story you're telling. So maybe we could find a way to put it in. So communication, I think, is the first reason why games fall apart, because the DM doesn't communicate with the players. Players don't communicate with the trouble. Time and time again, we've had examples of players and DMs saying, what do you want? Or what do you want to change? At the end of every game, I say, what do you want to change? What do you want to see? Is there something you like? If there's something you didn't like, is there something in, the game that you would like to see in the game? Like, is there a module you'd really like to go through? Is there a monster you'd really like to fight? Is there a treasure you'd really like to find? Is there an NPC situation you'd really like to, come in? Was there something I did that didn't work for you? Let me know so I can learn and change it to be better. And I've seen other DMs ask the same questions at the end of games or post on their Facebooks little, questionnaires. And inevitably, 9 out of 10 times, the answers are always, no, it's okay. I mean, even if you're sitting at the table and you can see on people's faces that anger, that detachment, that frustration, that, now they're doing this instead of investing, the off-kilter conversations, the dick jokes, the movie references, the bombs that are just destroying your campaign one by one are happening. Support me, Coke. When you try to establish that line of communication with individuals or groups about, hey, let's communicate 9 out of 10 times, it's fine. It's because we don't want to hurt other people's feelings, and we don't know how to communicate what's bothering us. Now, I've never had a problem with that. So unfortunately, sometimes it means I end up sabotaging game situations. But I was raised, I feel that if, something needs to be said, it should be said. If the question needs to be asked, it should be asked. If a statement needs to be made, it should be made. So if I feel like a DM, hey, this isn't working, I'm going to say, hey, this isn't working. If I'm a player and I'm in a situation and I feel like my personal comfort level or my beliefs or I'm being disrespected or whatever, I'm not going to just sit there and go and then, start doing this or start talking about things that aren't related to the game or stop dropping, F-bombs and dick jokes or just not contributing. I'm going to say, hey, what can we do to change this? I admit I am part of the problem. Unfortunately, a lot of the times, the other person in these situations won't admit. It's very hard for people to admit, I'm a part of the problem. I did something wrong. I see that I'm contributing to this. Yes, there is something I'd like to change. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I feel like I have to tell you this. I don't want the game to end, but I feel like I have to tell you this. And it's very hard. Then, you ask people, they don't respond. And it's not respond because they think, oh, well, everything's fine. It's they don't know how to respond. They don't know how to establish that communication that when we're kids, we're told to share and express our feelings. And it's okay. But somewhere in teenager adulthood, we're told, no, don't express your feelings. No, it's not okay. No, you can't tell people things because politically correct, whatever, everything is shiny, happy people. You get a award for trying as long as you, blah, 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 yakety smackety. We forget how to communicate. We forget how to say, to defend and advocate for ourselves in productive, constructive ways. It either becomes an argument or whatever. So communication, establishing the rules of the table, the rules of the game, the rules of the world. Communicating that, fine, we're going to have, 10, 20 minutes of bullshitting before the game starts just to get all that energy out, just to set up that comfortable time when the dick jokes and the F-bombs and the talking about the movie or the debate or the haircut or the job are completely appropriate because you're a bunch of people sitting on the table, your friends, whatever. But then once the game starts, you need to communicate, okay, now we're in the game. Now you need to invest that energy in the game. And when this starts, when oh, fuck you, you got something I didn't, blah, 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 oh, whatever, that is taking away from the game. And we need to communicate and address that, but we don't. And we just sit there and we go, oh, I really don't like it when he says those things about me or my character. I really don't like hearing that language. I really don't like talking about, your job when we're playing. I want to play. This is my 3 hours to play. So, yeah. So, in our quest to discover why games fall apart, why relationships fall apart, first and foremost, it's always communicating. We forget how to communicate. We don't know how to communicate. We talk about setting up the session zero and communicating the rules and the expectations, which we'll talk about in the next one, expectations. But then we need to repeat that exercise every now and then. Every time we feel as a group something's going wrong, we have to stop being afraid to communicate. We have to say, look, dude, your constant dick jokes really offend me. Or look, your constant acting like you're better than everybody else really upsets me. Or look, dude, Mike, your constant, sort of snarky, sarcastic, negative, you think you're, holding everybody up to your ideals is really affecting the game. I mean, I'm not guilty. I'm not innocent. I know I play a part. And the reason why this happens, I know that I have a reputation of being toxic, and I know that I can be toxic, or at least my attempts are perceived as toxic. And I'm too old to change that, but I'm not too old or not too set in my ways to realize communication needs to happen. So communicate, session zero, but then repeat that and repeat it again and repeat it again. And every time it feels like the group is falling apart, establish that safe zone to communicate, because the minute that stops, the minute this starts happening, is the minute your game is done. So this is our first in a line of inquiries into why games might fall apart. If this is something you appreciate and want to hear more of, comment down below. And if you think I should shut the fuck up and never talk again, comment down below. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're feeling generous, maybe consider supporting me, as this is my only job right now. I will talk to you later. Stay safe.